Coming up on Arirang News. A working mom with twins in elementary school, Professor Yoo-mi, is named the inaugural senior presidential secretary for the country's low birth rate. She vowed to come up with both short and long-term policies to overcome the demographic emergency. South Korea's economy contracted by 0.2% on quarter from April to June due to base effect and weak domestic demand. The National Assembly has rejected a special counsel probe bill over a Marine's death, which was up for a revote after President Yoon vetoed it. Now, a filibuster is taking place with rival lawmakers clashing over contentious broadcasting bills. Welcome to the 9 p.m. edition of Arirang News. I'm Kim Bo-kyung. We start with the nation working to address its chronically low birth rate. Earlier, President Yoon declared the nation's population situation and low birth rate an emergency. Now, he announced an economics professor who's also a working mom as his closest aide to advise him. Our top office correspondent Kim Do-yeon with the latest.
A mother of twin boys is now set to aid President Yoon Suk-yeol with one of the declared national emergencies, the low birth rate. On Thursday, the top office announced that Professor Yoo-mi of Hanyang University's College of Economics and Finance has been chosen for this brand new senior secretary position that President Yoon created to tackle the current demographics crisis.
Yoo-mi has been deeply studying the low birth rate issue in our country, focusing on how marriage and working spouses affect wages, how improving education and changes in the labor market impact economic growth, and how dual-income families divide childcare time.
The changes in population structure significantly impact economic growth, finance, employment, childcare, and welfare. Therefore, we will actively work on communication and preparation with various government departments. By assisting the President, we will do our utmost to help South Korea overcome the national population emergency and leap toward a hopeful future.
The new senior secretary is in her 40s with her boys still in elementary school. Important factors that the top office considered when filling in this new role. A working mother who's still involved in raising her children to relate best with other working moms in the nation.
With the expertise and experience accumulated over the years, along with a fresh perspective, as a senior secretary in their 40s, we expect to develop more fundamental and groundbreaking solutions to overcome the low birth rate problem.
Yoo is now set to advise President Yoon with creating a new powerful ministry to respond to the low birth rate. President Yoon announced this earlier this year, saying that the minister will be the Deputy Prime Minister for Social Affairs, something the current Education Minister serves as. In the meantime, there will be 2 secretaries under the new senior secretary, one for population coordination and one for tackling the low birth rate. Both positions were filled by career public officials to assist the new senior secretary. In the meantime, the new senior secretary also said, while new policies will be carried out to raise the birth rate, a significant decline in the working population is inevitable. Another task Yoo considers major. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
President Yoon has also named a new chief for the Overseas Korean Agency, the former ambassador to Indonesia, Sang-deok. The presidential office announced the appointment on Thursday, highlighting Lee's experience of working in regions with large Korean expat communities, such as in China and Southeast Asia. The new commissioner is a career diplomat who also served as ambassador to Singapore and counselor at the Korean Embassy in China, and was the Director General for Northeast Asian Affairs at the Foreign Ministry. The top office says Lee's extensive experience is expected to greatly contribute to protecting Koreans overseas and strengthening exchanges and cooperation. In the meantime, Korea's economy shrank by 0.2% on quarter from April to June, weighed down by lackluster consumer spending and construction investment. Park Gun-woo reports.
South Korea's real gross domestic product fell in the second quarter of 2024, dropping by 0.2% from the previous quarter. That's according to advanced estimates released by the Bank of Korea on Thursday. It's the biggest fall in on-quarter growth since a 0.5% drop in real GDP in the fourth quarter of 2022. The BOK says the fall in GDP in the second quarter of this year is due to the base effect, due to a strong first quarter, as well as a lower level of private consumption and construction investment. It also said annual growth will still reach its earlier targets when considering the overall growth rate for the first half of the year.
It's hard to say the economy got worse just because it grew a lot in the first quarter and then shrank in the second quarter. The economy grew 2.8% in the first half of the year, and if the latter half grows by 2.2% as predicted, that leads to an annual growth rate calculation of 2.5%. The economic growth is in line with the annual growth target set earlier.
The BOK also spoke about other factors behind the fall in real GDP in the second quarter. Private consumption dropped by 0.2% on quarter as spending on goods, including motor vehicles and clothing, declined. Construction investment also contracted by 1.1%. While exports saw a rise of 0.9% on quarter, mainly due to car and chemical product exports, there was also a 1.2% rise in imports. The central bank said domestic demand will be able to recover in the near future as they forecast exports to keep increasing and high costs to possibly stabilize. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
Hyundai Motor Company recorded its best quarterly performance in the second quarter of this year, thanks to increased sales of high-end vehicles. Operating profit rose 0.7% in the second quarter last year to nearly 4.3 trillion won, or around $3 billion. Sales were up 6.6% to just above 45 trillion won, or $32 billion during the same period. The company attributed the increase to a combination of increased sales of SUVs and other high-end vehicles, as well as the weakened won against the dollar. As we settle into the second half of the year, the government published its annual tax code revision this afternoon. One of the focuses was on addressing structural risks like the low birth rate. Our finance correspondent Moon Hye-ryun has the details.
We must actively respond to structural risks, such as the population crisis and the decline of the country's potential growth rate in order for our economy to thrive.
A new addition to the tax code reflects the government's goal to increase support for newlyweds and parents. For newlyweds who register their marriage between 2024 and 2026, each person will be given a tax credit of 500,000 Korean won, or roughly $362, meaning that a couple can save 1 million won on taxes together. A tax credit is an amount of money that taxpayers can subtract directly from the taxes they owe, and the government will also be revising the child tax credit already in place, raising it by 100,000 Korean won. This means it will now amount to 250,000 won for one child aged 8 or older, 300,000 for 2 children, and 400,000 for 3 children. Another big revision is to the inheritance tax code that's been in place for nearly a quarter of a century. It currently ranges between 10 to 50% on taxable income, which is among the highest among members of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, second only to Japan.
For example, small and medium-sized companies, which are family-owned, some of them had to go out of business because they could not find other managers or owners who will take over the business, and when their parents wanted to leave the businesses to their children, they found that they could not afford to because of the high inheritance tax.
So in order to help SMEs, the government is proposing to lower the highest inheritance tax rate to 40% and the minimum tax base raised to 200 million Korean won from the current 100 million. It also aims to abolish the premium that's placed on majority stakeholders that inherit stocks of family-owned conglomerates. Currently, this stands at 20%, meaning that South Korea's inheritance tax rate can reach up to 60%.
The revision aims to prevent current owners of the company from maintaining low stock prices to lower inheritance tax for their children. The bill will be submitted to the National Assembly in September, and these revisions could take effect starting next year. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Payment delays at two popular e-commerce platforms in the country are causing chaos for both sellers and customers. Some refunds have been made to customers as the company plans to speed up that process first. An Sung-jin has the latest.
Hundreds of enraged customers gathered in front of an e-commerce platform company's headquarters on Thursday demanding refunds. This comes as delays in payments to sellers by two e-commerce platforms led to unilateral cancellations of orders. Tmon and We Make Price are e-commerce retailers in South Korea, but are subsidiaries of the Singapore-based platform Qoo10. The platforms have failed to pay sellers for their earnings since May after the mother company was reportedly in a tight monetary situation due to aggressive merger deals. The co-chief executive of both platforms on Thursday apologized and said that they will secure enough funds for customer refunds. It also added that its mother company Qoo10 is working to provide the unpaid funds to its sellers. The company has so far completed at least 700 refunds and is expected to speed up the process. These liquidity woes have particularly affected sellers of digital gadgets and travel agencies as the holiday season has drawn closer. Moreover, the majority of the enlisted sellers on the platform are small and medium-sized enterprises, which further raises concerns about financial difficulties.
We'll conduct an on-site inspection of the companies and see if they're properly providing refunds to the customers who have canceled their orders. We also plan to establish a response team at the Korea Consumer Agency to begin preparations for collective dispute mediation.
Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok on Thursday also instructed relevant agencies such as the Fair Trade Commission and the Financial Supervisory Service to closely examine the situation and asked to ensure that further damage to customers and sellers is prevented. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
President Yoon Suk-yeol has declared 11 additional special disaster areas following heavy damage from the recent heavy rainfall. His office said Thursday that the new disaster areas include Okcheon-gun County in Chungcheon-bukdo Province, Keumsan-gun and Buyeogun counties in Chungcheon-namdo Province, Iksan City in Jeollabukdo Province, and Andong City in Gyeongsang-bukdo Province. This comes after an initial designation of 5 special disaster areas 10 days ago. With heavy downpours having continued after the monsoon season, Yoon asked the Minister of the Interior and Safety Lee Sang-min and other relevant cabinet members to mobilize all available resources to support rapid recovery and relief for citizens. He further expressed concerns about the rising price of fruit and vegetables, calling for close monitoring of market conditions. South Korea and the Czech Republic are expected to reach a historic turning point in bilateral relations when their leaders meet in September to discuss nuclear power cooperation. That's according to President Yoon Suk-yeol's Chief of Staff for Policy, Song Tae-yoon, in a briefing Thursday. Having returned from Prague with Industry Minister An Dok-kun, Song said they met with Czech Prime Minister Petr Fiala to convey the president's gratitude for selecting a South Korean consortium as the preferred bidder for a nuclear power plant project. Song added that the Czech government said the first reason for its selection was the two countries' shared universal values, such as democracy and human rights. The second reason was Seoul's outstanding bid and its robust industrial base. Prague also hopes to see bilateral cooperation expand in fields such as R&D and innovation in education. Song said the two sides will strive to make sure President Yoon's visit to Prague will mark a historic turning point in Korea-Czech relations. Over in the National Assembly, another filibuster is taking place following one at the beginning of this month. This time, rival lawmakers are engaged in a fierce standoff over contentious bills that call for revisions to the broadcasting laws, seeking to reduce state influence over public broadcasters. Our National Assembly correspondent, Shin Ha-young, reports.
The main opposition Democratic Party on Thursday tabled one of the broadcasting law revision bills, prompting the ruling People Power Party to launch a filibuster in protest. The three bills aimed at reducing state influence over public broadcasters were passed by the opposition-controlled National Assembly last year, but were vetoed by President Yoon. These include amendments to the Broadcasting Act, the Foundation for Broadcast Culture Act, and the Korea Educational Broadcasting System. The DP is pushing the bills again this time with a revision to the Act on the establishment of the Korea Communications Commission, which requires 4 members instead of the current 2 to pass a resolution.
Everyone has the freedom of the press and publication, with no permits or censorship allowed. This freedom cannot be infringed by anyone.
However, the PPP argues that the bills would increase the presence of progressive figures on the Public Broadcaster Board.
Since 2000, the structure of public broadcasting, including the number of board members and their nomination rights, has remained the same under both conservative and progressive governments. If it was acceptable then, why change it now?
Under the National Assembly Act, a filibuster on each bill can be halted after 24 hours if at least 3/5 of the parliament agree to do so. This means that with the filibuster taking place, the plenary session could last at least 4 days to address the 4 bills. Meanwhile, ahead of the filibuster, the Assembly on Thursday rejected a special prop into the death of a Marine during last year's flood rescue operations. It had been vetoed by President Yoon once again about 2 weeks ago and sent back to the Assembly for a revote. Out of 299 votes cast, 194 were in favor, 104 were against, and 1 lawmaker abstained. But to pass a bill vetoed by the president, 2/3 or more of the lawmakers present must approve it, along with the majority attendance. This bill fell short by 6 votes. The proposed bill calls for a special prop into allegations that the presidential office and the defense ministry inappropriately interfered in the investigation of the Marine's death. Right after the session, the opposition parties held a rally to protest and vowed to push for the special prop bill again. 신하영, Arirang News.
North Korea is presumed to have sent hundreds more balloons in its latest round of deliveries to the south. The Joint Chiefs of Staff said Thursday that the North sent some 500 balloons carrying scraps of paper and plastic the day before. 480 of them fell on South Korean territory, one of which landed in the presidential compound. The military said it would continue collecting the balloons after they fall and refrain from shooting them down in mid-air to prevent their contents from spreading and causing further damage. South Korea has resumed full-scale propaganda loudspeaker broadcasts along the entire border in response to the North's continued balloon provocations. South Korea's Air Force, along with the U.S. Marine Corps, started joint air drills this week in Suwon, south of Seoul. The training involves the U.S. Marine Corps' most advanced fighter aircraft, the F-35B and the F-A-18, and South Korea's F-15K and KF-16 fighter jets. The forces will conduct a variety of training drills, including close air support, defensive counter-air, and air interdiction missions. The aim is to sharpen Seoul and Washington's combat capabilities amid escalating tensions on the Korean Peninsula. The drills will run for 3 weeks until August 8th. Over in the U.S., President Biden addressed the nation for the first time since he dropped out of the race, saying his decision was the best way to unite the nation. Republican candidate Donald Trump was quick to turn his focus to his new opponent. Cha Yoon-kyung has more.
U.S. President Joe Biden gave an address from behind the Resolute desk in the White House's Oval Office, outlining his decision to withdraw from the presidential campaign. Biden said he believed his record and leadership as president were enough to be reelected. However, he explained that he had made the decision to bring forth a new and younger voice to defend democracy in the U.S.
So I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation. That's the best way to unite our nation.
President Biden did not directly accuse former President Donald Trump during the address. Nevertheless, he reiterated that democracy in the U.S. depended on American voters. Biden endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris, saying that he decided to pass the torch to her, as she's an experienced, tough, and capable candidate. He also mentioned that he will focus on his job as president over his remaining 6 months in office, pledging to push for Supreme Court reform and respond to the climate change crisis. In response to this, former President Trump blasted his new opponent in his first rally since Biden's departure, calling Harris an ultra-liberal driving force and a lunatic.
If Kamala Harris gets in, she would be the most radical far-left extremist ever to occupy the White House times 10. There's never been a lunatic like this in the White House, and we've had some bad ones.
It seems that U.S. voters have rallied on both sides as the presidential race continues. According to public opinion polls conducted by CNN, after the candidacy withdrawal by President Biden, the gap between support for Trump and Harris has decreased more than that for Trump and Biden, showing that 49% of those polled supported Trump and 46% supported Harris. Cha Yoon-kyung, Arirang News.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that China would not supply Russia with weapons. In an evening address on Wednesday, President Zelensky said this was confirmed during the meeting between the Ukrainian foreign minister and his Chinese counterpart in Guangzhou on Wednesday. The meeting was the first visit to China by a Ukrainian foreign minister since 2012. Zelensky said the meetup is a clear signal that China supports the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine. China has been accused of selling components and equipment to help Russia's military production. The opening ceremony of the 2024 Summer Olympics kicks off on Friday over in Paris. Among the games scheduled for Saturday is that of badminton, for which Korea now has a tough and experienced team to contend against. Our Choi Soo-young has more.
Since the 1992 Barcelona Olympics, South Korea has been one of the dominant countries in badminton, winning a total of 19 medals, including 6 golds. However, in the 2010s, many star players retired at the same time, leaving behind relatively young athletes. As a result, the Korean badminton team won just 1 bronze medal each during 3 consecutive Olympics. However, thanks to the newly replaced generation, a new golden era has come for the team. At last year's Hangzhou Asian Games, the team won a total of 7 medals, signaling a resurgence. The gold medalist in women's singles at the Hangzhou Games and current world number 1, An Se-young, is the top contender for a title in Paris. This year, she has won 3 out of 7 open matches. Her biggest rival is China's Chen Yufei. An is determined to show her best performance on the Olympic stage.
Preparing for the Olympics has been incredibly challenging. Given the immense support and attention I received, I realized the only way to give back is through my performance. So I focused solely on overcoming my injury and perfecting my badminton skills.
In women's doubles, Lee So-hee and Baek Hana are also strong gold medal contenders. They won the prestigious All England Open Badminton Championships for 2 consecutive years and also clinched the Asian Championships this year. In mixed doubles, Seo Seung-jae and Chae Yu-jung are aiming for Olympic gold. They won the World Championship last year, and both being left-handed, they believe their powerful smashes and unique playing style give them a strong advantage.
In badminton, a left-handed combination is rare and considered unique. When playing against right-handed opponents, the variations in our shots are very different and can be quite powerful.
The South Korean badminton team, aiming for at least 2 gold medals, will begin their matches on the 27th. Choi Soo-young, Arirang News.
Today is Chungbok, the hottest day of the year. The heat is incredible across the country. With the first heat wave warning issued in Seoul this year, Chungbok heat will continue tomorrow as well. Daytime temperatures will rise to 34 degrees Celsius, similar to today's. In addition, heat of 33 degrees or higher is expected across the country.
The effect of Typhoon Kemi will cause heavy rain on Jeju Island and the southern coast. On Jeju Island, where rain has already begun, up to 300 millimeters is expected in the mountainous areas until Saturday. Up to 120 millimeters is on the southern coast from tomorrow. Tomorrow's Seoul, Gwangju, and Jeju will start off at 27 degrees. Highs will move up to 33 in Chuncheon, Daejeon, and Daegu. Next week, there will be rain forecast for the Seoul metropolitan area and western Gangwon-do province. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. That's all we have for today. Thank you for watching. Arirang News will be back at 9 a.m. Korea time.